I used to think the most important thing in my life was my spiritual path. I thought that working on my spiritual development was the thing that I was here on the world to do. Now, this was a belief that I held for some time, at least for the 20 years that I was a Tibetan Buddhist, and I never thought about it. In fact, I wasn't even aware that I held this belief until I realized that I was very anxious and kind of wandering and wondering about my spiritual path after I gave up Tibetan Buddhism. And, on one side, it was like I knew that, really all I had to do was nothing, literally do nothing, just, let everything drop away, let all your beliefs go, see through your ego face to the world so that it's like, oh yeah, well, that's just, a construct that I have to have in order to function with the world, but it's not really me. You just got to see through all of that stuff and just, let it drop. So I knew that on one hand. On the other hand, I had this sort of feeling that I had to be doing something, I had to be doing some practice. I had to have some structure in my life, some spiritual structure so that I was still, progressing along this path. So there was this underlying kind of anxiety about my life at the same time as I knew like none of it was necessary. So I held two conflicting beliefs. At some point, because of this kind of angst, which is an indication, when you have any kind of angst in your life and struggle, it's usually some indication that, there is some conflict of beliefs going on there. So that's when I uncovered this belief. It was so core to Tibetan Buddhism that I never questioned it. It seemed like it was my belief. But was it? I'm not sure. I mean, I certainly took it on for the time that I was a Tibetan Buddhist. Luckily, I didn't let it overshadow my love for my family. I did always put my family first. And, when you think of a religion where the person who started the religion, part of his, story of enlightenment was that he snuck out of the family home and left his wife and child in order to follow his own spiritual path. He's a bit of a coward, I think. He could have, sat down and talked to her about it. Anyway, with that being part of the story, that shows you how much this is a really big part of Buddhism, this idea that, your spiritual path should be all-encompassing. And the emphasis on monastics is also part of this idea that your spiritual progress should be so important that, that there's this big emphasis on, actually leaving the world and then going to somewhere where you can totally focus on your spiritual development. So it's a big thing in Buddhism. And it's also a really great marketing ploy because what it does is it makes like if you're a guru, right? And you say, the most important thing in your life is your spiritual path. And this is said in all kinds of different ways. It's not necessarily spoken directly, but it underpins everything. So if you've got a bunch of students and they're all thinking that, the most important thing is my spiritual path, because of course it's the key to enlightenment, it's the key to getting out of this circle of life and death is becoming enlightened. So, that makes it the most important thing because you're never going to get out of suffering until you become enlightened, and you're never going to become enlightened unless you work really hard on your spiritual path. And you're never going to be able to do any of that unless you keep paying for the courses and the retreats, right? So that's the hook. And even though, the teachings on one hand will say, well, you're already perfect, you have everything you need inside, and all you need to do is actually, do what I said, which is drop everything and just be. The Tibetan Buddhist path is, is very laid out. There's this step and this step and this step. And I'm not saying that's wrong. It was necessary for me to follow that path for the time that I did. I learned a lot, and it gave me the basis on which I can now no longer need it. But the trouble is if you have this underlying belief that you must always be working on your spiritual path, you get a bit trapped, because most of us don't become enlightened. Most of us don't even know what enlightenment is or how it relates to us, and we get these vague things that's like, well, it means you're always going to be happy. And so, you look at your life and it's like, well, are any of us ever really happy? I mean, we can be content with what we've got. I think that's probably the best that we can do, but always happy? It's like, well, that's a bit weird. You should be sad sometimes. You should sometimes feel a bit annoyed. Those are normal human feelings. So I think it's not really a matter of not having those feelings that are not happiness. It's a matter of being very light with them and recognizing that they're just feelings and not being trapped by them. That's the key. And all of us can do that. Now, when I stopped being a Tibetan Buddhist, it was wonderful to be ordinary, to not be struggling forever to get more of this and more of this and more teachings and more teachings. And the message always coming to you was that, you have to go and pay for another retreat because there's going to be some special little gem that you haven't already got. But in actual fact, we did already have everything that we needed. We're born with everything we need. Sure, we need a teacher to give us a few instructions, but this always, holding on to your students by just, it's like the carrot, dangling the carrot in front of the donkey and never, never, never letting them get it. Never saying, actually, you've got enough. Now just go away and practice. I mean, so you would say that sometimes, yes, but that's not the message that actually came to you. And it never really occurred to me that I could or should completely leave the religion. I was definitely growing further away from the Sangha, had been for several years before I learned about Sogyal Rinpoche's abuse and, completely left. But when I left, I examined a lot of the beliefs that I had held as part of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, and I just dropped a lot of them. But this one was so sort of subtle. I didn't recognize it, didn't see it was there for a start. So now I've decided that no, my spiritual development, enlightenment, is not the most important thing in my life. I find now that this whole idea of a path itself is problematic, because if you think in terms of a path, it means you've got somewhere here you're starting with and somewhere there you're trying to go to. But in actual fact, it's not really like that. I mean, if you look at yourself and you go, well, there's something wrong with me that I have to fix, you're already in the wrong kind of mind state. Because the trick is actually to get rid of all of that sort of stuff that says, well, there's something wrong with us already, and we have got to fix ourselves, we've got to go somewhere, we've got to be better than how we are now. That kind of thinking is, I mean, it's okay, it gets you to learn stuff and gets you, to look at yourself differently if you've got the right kind of teaching. But you get trapped in this idea that there's something wrong with you that you've got to fix. And for so long as you have that idea, you're never going to get to the end of the path anyway, because at what point are you going to go, well, I don't need any more fixing now? And if you do say that, I think there's likelihood that there's some delusion behind that, because the whole mind state is just, it's not even in the realm of what most spiritual paths are actually telling you, which is to drop all of that and to see beyond all of that to the essence of who you are, which is perfect. It literally is. You literally already are perfect, and exactly the same way as the world is, because it's all functioning as it should function. And that's not to say that there's not wrong things going on. It's to say that the world has a set of laws under which it functions, and it's doing that. So, but personally, it's like, once you say you're okay, you become okay. You know, once you stop focusing on your limitations and start seeing yourself clearly, seeing your essence, once you can pare away, and I mean, you have to do this through meditation really, but once you can kind of pare away all of this stuff that is telling you that you're here and you've got to go there, and that you've got to follow this path to get there, and you've got to do this and this and this and this and this, and you've got to buy it all, of course, you know, because somebody's selling it to you. You need to get out of that mindset entirely, because it's a very materialistic way of looking at spirituality. And I've always thought that the key was always entirely in meditation. If you've got good meditation instructions where you can go beyond this sense of me meditating on something, if you can get to the point where you can recognize your own awareness and you can go, yeah, you know, I'm aware now, and you recognize that you're aware without all these thoughts and beliefs and fears and everything smothering you. And then if you can turn your awareness back on itself, see if your awareness can actually find your awareness, you know, you just try that next time you're meditating. It's like, okay, once you know you're aware, then turn that awareness back on itself and see if you can find it. And what you'll find is your essence, which is not a tangible thing anyway. But I'm not going to tell you what you can find. The thing is, that's all you need to do. And that is pure Dzogchen. I got it from the Tibetan Buddhists, and that's why I was a Tibetan Buddhist. Those teachings drew me to them. It's what I felt I needed. It's what I did need. It's what I learned. I came away with those teachings, came away with that knowledge and that experience of myself. So it's like I know now that that's it. There's nothing more. I don't need anything else. I'm not enlightened. I don't care. I don't care because it's kind of irrelevant, you know, this idea of getting somewhere. I'm quite happy just being able to live my life, you know, without stress and in a conscious, loving, expansive kind of manner. And there's no need to give that a name or a label. And there's certainly no need for me to do anything. So if I was going to say, well, you know, what do I think is the most important thing in life now? I mean, you could list a whole lot of things, you know, family, love, awareness, fighting to get governments to do the right thing for climate change. You know, there's all these things that are much more important than my personal path to enlightenment. You know, there's homeless people that need help. There's victims of domestic abuse that need help. There's so much that in the world needs people to work on to help overcome. Isn't this idea that I should be working on my spiritual path as my prime thing, isn't that incredibly selfish? I think so. I think it is incredibly, incredibly selfish. So there's all those things that are so much more important than my spiritual path. In terms of my spiritual path, what's important just now, just being here now. Truly, it sounds like a platitude, but doing nothing. I mean, just taking time to just be. That's it. Now that I've given up this idea that I should be doing something, that I should be following some path, I don't have any angst over it anymore. I should have dropped that one a long time ago. But, you know, it's not easy sometimes to see the beliefs that are causing us angst. We have to look for them. So my focus is on just, you know, helping my editing clients and publishing clients to publish books that they are happy with. I'm trying to find authors who are going to publish books that are going to be a positive contribution to the future. Because I think we need to imagine a positive future. And fiction writers can do that. I want books written by people of very diverse backgrounds, you know, memoirs that we can sell to share to people who need to understand other people, you know, who need to develop their empathy and understanding of people from different cultures with different experiences. So for me, that's my work, and that's really valuable. And then on the hobby side, if you like, there's my permaculture garden. I want to set up my property, which is already self-sufficient in terms of power. I'm setting up a food forest, a permaculture system where there will be food growing here, nut trees, fruit trees, but also, perennial vegetables, and creating a natural system where things just, self-seed and keep propagating naturally. So that my property will be a place for the future that will have some resilience against, whatever is coming. So those things for me are more important than my own spiritual path, in terms of getting somewhere. So, what is most important in your life? Is it your spiritual path? Was it your spiritual path? Are there things in life that could be or should be more important than your spiritual path? Now, I asked this to those of you who were in a religion or a cult, and you joined that because you were interested in spiritual things and you wanted to learn how to develop yourself in a spiritual fashion. And all of that's great. So if you come from a background like that, then you're interested in spiritual things. And the danger is that we can end up going from one cult to another, that we can end up just giving up one set of beliefs that are imposed on us from outside for another set of beliefs imposed on us from outside. And, the wellness industry is full of charlatans, full of people spouting all sorts of nonsense just to get your money, basically. And it always starts off with it sounding quite reasonable. That's how you get into a cult. Something sounds quite reasonable, and then from there you get led in step by step until things are not so reasonable, but you sort of accept it because other things seem reasonable and valuable. And before you know it, you're stuck in something which may not be entirely healthy, not as healthy as it might look to you if you're inside. So what I'm saying is, be careful if you think that your spiritual development is the most important thing in your life, because it's a hook. It's a hook that other people can use to manipulate you and to get you to part with your money. So I'm not saying that it shouldn't be the most important thing in your life. At a certain period in my life, it was really good that it was the most important thing in my life because I learned a lot. But like all beliefs, you need to hold it very lightly so that you don't kind of become a slave to it. And don't see it as something for life. I think that was the trouble for a lot of us, was that we ended up kind of stuck in a community and a system long past the time when we didn't need it anymore. Because basically you're being delivered a curriculum, and it's like when you've finished university, you leave the university, you go on and do other things. With Buddhism, it's the same thing, once you've learnt what you need to learn about Buddhism and all its, systems, and you've studied and practiced it, you get to the end of that, you can go elsewhere. And by the end, I don't mean enlightened. I mean, you just have the knowledge. And, the Buddhists will say, well, knowledge is not the same as experience or realization. Sure. But that you're only going to get by actually living your life in accordance to the principles that you learned, that through you testing them are true in your experience. The purpose of this video is just to share with you that I had this hidden belief, which I've only just uncovered, and letting go of it is such a relief, as I at last don't have this feeling that I should be doing something, to become more spiritual or better. Or I'm not saying I'm a good person, I'm not saying I'm not saying I'm perfect as a person, ego relating to the world. I'm just saying that I know that at my core, I'm already fine, same as everybody else. So, you know, this perfection is your essence is perfect. The way we relate to the world may not be, probably isn't, but if you try and always tune into and work from your inner essence, all that stuff that's obscuring your perfection is going to naturally fall away. At least that's how I see it for myself these days. And I just try and live my life that way. Anyway, so there's another step to freedom, another belief that was tucked in the background, so I didn't know that it was there. And now it's gone. Nothing more to do. That's all for today. Thanks for listening. Bye.